around whether the president should be spending so much money on a new jet. What is the current condition of Inkwazi? Because based on reports, we hear that there's permanent breakdowns, and this surely doesn't look good for the image of the presidency.
Certainly. So Inkwazi is actually quite a young aircraft. It's in very good shape. At present rates of usage, it should last for at least another 15, 20 years. The issue that's happening is that there is a shortage of skills at the squadron that maintains Inkwazi. What happened is that in 2013, the contract with Denel's Air Manpower Group was cancelled.
Okay.
And the majority, well, not the majority, but many of those personnel worked within 21 Squadron, which is a squadron that now operates Inkwazi. So if you look back at all the last three incidents, there was an incident in Russia, in Burundi, and recently in Qatar. None have been safety of flight issues per se, but they were all issues that should have been caught during maintenance. And so the aircraft itself is fine. There's nothing that can't be solved through a few interventions.
Sure. But I mean, we have a very impressive safety record. If you just take the history of South African Airways, the SA Defence Force, we have commercial aircraft that come in and out of our harbours and rather airports, that if you say that we don't have capacity in the maintenance aspect of the presidential jet, I mean, how does that even come about?
Well, it came about through the cancellation of the contract. The issue is that the Air Manpower Group contract has been in place for 23 years or so, and it fell afoul of rules regarding procurement. So it was cancelled, and it's been very difficult to put in place something to replace it. Obviously, once you lose this kind of experience, it's quite hard to regain it.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there is a shortage of funds. The Air Force is currently undergoing austerity measures, and it is therefore not able to hire and capacitate the way that it should be.
Yeah, because I've read that especially with the new proposed, or rather Inkwazi was under the tenure of Coleman Andrews, who was then the CEO of SAA, who had proposed that Inkwazi become the presidential jet. But because of the number of delegates, particularly when it comes to trade missions, etc., that it is simply not large enough. And plus, it has to make a number of layovers or stopovers for refueling, which then means there are delays and there's potential security risks. Essentially, we just need a bigger jet. What do you know?
Well, when Inkwazi was acquired back in 2001, the requirement was for an aircraft that could carry 8 VIPs to 6,000 nautical miles. In other words, to fly to most European capitals non-stop. It would be convenient to have large aircraft, not necessary, and it would be convenient to have fewer fuel stops. No doubt a larger aircraft would be able to achieve that.
Yeah.
The aircraft being looked for would carry probably about 14 VIP passengers and another 16 or so so Inkwazi carries 8 VIPs and 10 in business class seating. The new aircraft will carry about 14 VIPs and the rest in business class seating, adding up to a total of 30 people on board.
Okay.
So yes, there is that argument, and every time you do stop over, there is an additional risk. Typically, the SANDF will pre-deploy security forces to the various fuel stops, and indeed, that is an issue. The question is really whether that is worth the cost that this will be. The key thing to understand here is that the cost of a new aircraft, whether it's leased or bought or whatever, will come out of the Air Force's budget, and the Air Force is already, critically underfunded. And it has a huge number of really important needs at the moment. For example, its transport aircraft, upon which it relies, are respectively 70 and 50 years old. So, in my view, yes, there is a legitimate requirement, per se. It is not currently a need, it's more of a want. And in my view, it would be better put off until, so in the meantime, more important requirements can be fulfilled.
Okay, but one of the things that laymen like myself and would understand, or that we misunderstand, as to what is required for VVIP, primarily the head of state, to travel. What kind of aircraft is required?
So first of all, I just want to meet one misconception. The president and deputy president cannot fly aboard SA.
They can't do commercial.
Purely because the vast majority of destinations aren't served by regular commercial flights. If they are, the flights are very irregular, and they're served by airlines that are, pretty much security risks. So I did a study where I looked at 50 African capitals, and tried to identify direct commercial flights from here to there. And only about half of them had it, and of those half, most of them were only weekly or bi-weekly flights. So that being said, the kind of aircraft that's being specified is that it must have a separate bedroom and shower for the principal. It must have seating for between 8 and 14 VIPs, and then the remainder of the passengers must be aboard business class seating. There's a galley and whatnot. That, in my view, is reasonable. You want your president to arrive well refreshed. One issue we do have, though, is that at the moment the Nkwazi is being used exclusively as the president's aircraft, which was never the intention when it was acquired. The Air Force actually has a fleet of about 6 VIP aircraft. Nkwazi, a Falcon 100, 2 Falcon 50s, and 2 Citation 2s. And the idea is that when the president flies domestically, like down to Cape Town, down to Durban or wherever, or even to destinations overseas which are fairly close by, he ought to be using one of the smaller aircraft and leaving Nkwazi only for the long-range trips. But that being said, yes, typically you'd like to have a separate bedroom and seating for the principal and one other.
Yeah. We'll come back with the safety features as well, but we have a caller. Rudy is calling us from Emalahleni. Hello, Rudy.
Yes, I'd actually like to comment about this. I mean, we are now forking out for SA Airways for how many planes, and it goes into millions. And we almost on a recession. And he now wants to buy another plane, which I've heard in the newspaper, which is older than this plane and has done more hours. So why can't they employ extra competent technicians to fix it and overhaul it? I mean, this is getting ridiculous.
That would be the logical thing to do, Rudy, I'm sure. But we'll have our expert explain exactly why, especially with the cost that has been banded around. We've had various experts from the defense also saying that it's not likely to go to the 4 billion rand, and that's why they've sent out requests for proposals, and this will determine the price. But it's pretty much at a threshold of 1 billion rand or less.
4 billion rand is the cost of a brand new jet. So if you're going to acquire a brand new 777 or something similar, you're going to start out at about 3.2 billion rand for the aircraft before you then do the VIP interior. The VIP interior can cost anywhere from 1 to 2 billion rand. But the options in the RFI and the RFO are for long-term leases, short-term leases, and the purchase of second-hand aircraft, provided the aircraft is no older than the year 2005.
Okay, hypothetically speaking, if the Nkwazi were to be used as a trade-in and acquire the new jet, will that offset the cost?
There is no intention to retire Nkwazi. Nkwazi is going to be used as to augment the new aircraft and perhaps for the use of the Deputy President. The key thing to understand now is that the Deputy President never flies aboard Nkwazi. He only uses the other aircraft in the fleet.
All right, because that's also because of state security.
Yes, and because at the moment, as I described earlier, Nkwazi is being seen as the president's aircraft, which really it shouldn't be. It should be the aircraft for either the president or the deputy president flying long range.
All right, let's get independent aviation expert Phuthego Mojapele. Phuthego, thanks so much for joining us. I mean, how do we put to rest, especially if we test the argument, the moral argument that says this money could be used to build houses and feed the poor, as opposed to acquiring a new jet? What's your view on this matter?
Well, as I have indicated in the previous interviews I had with you guys, is that the fact of the matter is that the aircraft, if the aircraft has a problem, we cannot ignore the fact that there's a problem with an aircraft. And as far as manufacturer is concerned, they would also have a say as far as how their product is being used. If there's consistent malfunction of particular parts on the aircraft, and therefore I would imagine that acquiring a new aircraft would be something that would lay this matter to rest. As far as costs are concerned, I'm not too sure exactly. If we're looking at a 777, Boeing 777, if that's what they're looking at purchasing as the defense force, if that's what they're looking at purchasing before retrofitting the executive staff in it. The cost price would not get to 4 billion as people are suggesting. I don't think so. I really don't think so it will get to that. Well, if rent will continue to deteriorate, yes, we can look at that. There's that possibility, but I just don't think so.
Yeah, Putego, just also the soft power that a president will portray, in the sense that he arrives in a reliable jet, he's on time, he's refreshed, etc., even if it's for a country that some are saying is capable of affording this kind of expenditure. But what kind of impression does it create if a president's jet is stuck, it's unreliable, etc.? What kind of impression does that create internationally?
It is a bad image, I must say. It is a bad image. Even the small low-cost airlines, for a low-cost airline to be late arrivals, late departures, and all that, there's quite a lot of things that goes into the image of any particular brand that that airline is trying to portray out there. In this case, we're talking about the head of the state, the number one in the country, and I'm sure we can do better than that.
Putego, we also have Darren Olafir, a senior correspondent for the African Defence Review, in studio with us, who was really arguing that, Inkwazi, there's no intention of retiring Inkwazi, and quite frankly, it's more capacity issue, that there isn't the personnel to maintain the aircraft, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's still good to fly for another 20 years or so.
Well, I'm not too sure where is he basing his argument as far as personnel is concerned. Cindy, let me take you a bit backwards and just have a look at the units of Boeing 737, or just the Boeing in general in the country. Looking at SAA, looking at the Comair, looking at many other engineers that are around in the country. There's no such a thing that there's no personnel. Personnel is there. Why would you want to put people that are not qualified to service the aircraft of the president and be able to, people that are unable to service the aircraft? I don't think there's an issue with the capacity as far as servicing the aircraft is concerned. I think we do have enough capability to do that. It's not only